Welcome to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And let's kind of get into it. Let me put in my charger for my phone. There we go. Now we can talk and charge at the same time. All right. So we're kind of moving into a new subject, but it relates to twin flames and soulmates, and but it also relates to magic. So Carl Jung introduced us to the word archetype, these like key patterns um, in the collective consciousness. And an example of an archetype is like a mother figure. And when she, imagine you're like a child and you're looking up at your parents, and it seems like they can do everything. They keep you safe, they give you food, they offer structure, shelter, and in your little body, where you're looking from that perspective, they're like gods. They're like 12 feet tall. They're super strong, super beautiful, handsome, able, and they're at God status. So I believe the gods um, are seen from that pure, innocent, fresh slate uh, when they first take on the experience of life. They sweep you up out of the cold room, hold you to their body and feed you, or just comfort you, or they protect you from the neighbor's dog or the neighborhood bully. They give you wisdom, they teach you, they help you do your homework, they give you skills. So some of our so in our life, we don't get the full spectrum of someone being goddess and God, being the, I like to call them him and her. And a him is everything male, on a scale. So it can be feminine with some masculine traits, all the way to super masculine with no feminine traits. So we get a sliding scale of what we call him. And for her, we get a sliding scale, a little bit feminine, all the way to uber feminine. And when we hit these extremes, sometimes in our modern culture, we have a reaction, we get triggered. So some people don't see larger women as attractive. Like in our culture, Western culture specifically, we tend to think someone who is skinny might be an ideal form that's pushed on us. Um, but in other cultures, and I would say for myself, I think bigger women represent the goddess energy and represent love and represent kindness and represent acceptance and humor and understanding. And so I have a tendency to when I do my artwork, people with curves, women with curves seem to be more feminine and more attractive. And I tend to look at skinny as someone who I have negative associations. And so I think weak, I think broken, I think unable to provide for themselves and others. So I think selfish, I think materialistic, I think not fit to survive. And so what triggers in me is danger. And so we get triggered positively and negatively by the forces that channel through us, whether we're conscious of it or not. So some people have a lot of energy, go out and exercise, and they're channeling their warrior energy or their hero energy. Other people channel it towards making money and being an entrepreneur, and that's a good. Other people channel it towards science, others towards teaching, others towards caregiving. And so you can just kind of look at the collective as a full of potential. And as a collective, we are one organism working to sustain itself. I like to think of it as like moss, like lichens growing on a rock, and humanity is a lichen. And when it cooperates with all its parts and pieces, the organism survives. But if it goes to war against it, if then just like cancer cells are fine until they are seen as other things, then our immune system goes crazy, or those things start rapidly overgrowing. There's lots of other things going on with cancer, so we can't get too deep into it. But when we start seeing it as a foreign object, we might attack healthy tissue. Or when that healthy tissue starts to take over, like it's maybe being too good, then it becomes like a problem. It's like doing too good. It took its commands too well. It's overcompensating. So there's that scale again. But for this episode, what we're talking about is when we think someone is our soulmate or our twin flame, what's going on is they are reflecting hidden archetypes. And depending, and usually a combination of something terrible and hidden, but also something very beautiful and what you deem of high value, elevated, put on a pedestal. So usually there's a mixture of fear and excitement, and it gets twisted in our head as love. And we just can't stop thinking about them. They strike us. It's like a very highly polarized image that speaks very deeply to you. And the reality is, you are those potentials. You are that darkest aspect of this other person, but you're also the lightest. Now, unfortunately, uh, your body may not support that. Like, for example, I actually think I should be 6'5". I'm only 5'9". My inner goddess is dark. She is, she's either, she likes to assume the form of African American. She likes to assume the form of Hindu. She likes to assume a curvier shape, a sassier shape. That's not, well, you're stuck in a guy's body. So I'm in touch with my feminine, and I'm also actually in touch with my masculine. And together they smash together and make me. So there is a compromise. Okay, this is what we got. And these archetypes just aren't uh, in the human world. They extend to our earth as well, with a fiery personality and under the sign of Aries, with an emotional depth and solitude, a Pisces moon. So the archetypes are also represented symbolically in our planets and in our elements. And so if you're lacking in water element, which I on some level am, then I might think people who are very self-contained, mysterious, and I'm drawn in. People who have emotions. I mean, my twin flame has a very emotional side. His emotional range is like, on a scale from 1 to 10, is like a 20. My emotional range on a scale from 1 to 10 is a 5. There's a part of me that's really not trained in having enough permission to express my emotions and feel safe. So during the course of my journey, emotions were dangerous. So I had to keep it on the down low. Being my authentic self meant death. I had to keep my truth, myself, at a level 5. Even though I would like to keep it at a 10, I wasn't in a safe environment for, emotional security or physical security. Uh, public enemy number one back in the day. And so, what I am attracted to is people who give themselves permission to be their own authority, to be bossy, to be in charge, to be powerful. What I'm also attracted to is emotional people. What I'm attracted to is tall men. What I'm attracted to is curvy, sassy women. Uh, so I'm attracted to things in a weird way I can't express. And so that energy projects out of me and I'm attracted to those images. This is why archetypes are important. When you don't know it, you might be repelled. So in our culture, we tend to think of old people as scary, old people as useless, as a burden, uh, you know, obsolete, and we fear death. We've created a Christian hell. And so we see the declining is weakening and a burden and useless. So that triggers in me fear. So not all old people, because I have my golden girls. I'll always have an old woman in my life. Um, so I guess once you get to know me and my videos and my content, I will talk the opposite. I feel like I have a right to kind of talk about certain triggering subjects because sometimes the opposite is very true. Like, I have had, actually, ever since I started working in the health store, I've always adopted a cute old lady to be my special friend, my grandmother figure. Uh, and so, once again, this is the archetypes. It's the wise old woman. It's the loving enchantress witch who's old and wise and has something to pass on, or who can just, bring more patience because they see things so much better. Um, my ex best friend, she was always attracted to older men and grandpa figures. She loves her dad so much. He's declining in years. So she really has a sympathy for old men. So, what I really love about my ex bestie is we're like the same, but kind of opposites. She's more comfortable in her male power and with men. I'm more comfortable in my female power and with women. And so, but there's enough wholeness that, yeah, we'll accept the other half too, you know, as we all move into oneness. So I remember when we first were hanging out, I go, just so you know, I hate women. And she's like, just so you know, I hate men. And then we became like best friends. So, so that's just kind of how these energies can play out in conversation and personal beliefs and experience, but then they can also be transcended into love, transcended into understanding. Like, she'll always be my sister, and that might even be a higher place than friends. So we had a disagreement. So right now we're moving in different directions, but she'll never not be special to me. Like, she'll always be my sister. So, and nothing will take that away. So she's earned that. So, but let's move on because this is kind of, so we're seeing that relationships it, and how you interact with relationships extends more than just your twin flame and your soulmate and your partner. It's how you relate to yourself, how you relate to your family, how you relate to your coworkers, and extends to a collective level. So on the collective level, we have the goddess archetype in all her different phases of the moon, in all her different forms, from maiden mother crone to the 12 faces, or the 28 phases of the moon, different powers, different aspects. It's all goddess. On the flip side, it's all God. The the face can change, the form and function can change, but it's all one. And so, really understanding oneness and relationships is essential to improve your relationship with your twin flame, your soulmate, your partner. And in my mind, they're all equal, and you're only relating to yourself. And so, let's move on into knowing when you've met your twin flame or your soulmate or your partner. Um, for me, I felt like I met my twin flame. Uh, and I didn't have to think about it. When I saw him, I was like, the universe just delivered me the most dangerous, powerful, beautiful, monstrous, wild, unpredictable person in my life. I think I'm in love. I didn't really think that. I didn't think I was in love. I was blown away. And I was kind of someone, you know how like some people have someone on the back burner, someone that you might like, but you don't think it will work out. There was just like a lot of time and history and things that get put together, but you were open. I had this person. And literally after like our second video chat, I dumped the other guy. I was like, I'd rather go for this more dynamic, energized, crazy, wild, unpredictable energy than this other thing that I had. Both of them, I felt like the universe brought to me. Um, so, my best friend died in 2010. She was like my mother, and she was also like my sister, also like my best friend. She was like the light of my life. And so I usually don't play too much with the spirit world, but every once in a while I would like ask her for assistance. And I was like, hey, I guess if there's potential for a partnership in this lifetime, if you could help me, go for it, whatever. I kind of put it out there, but left it at that. And so before she died, she gave me like a Ken Barbie doll when we were doing like a transformational group uh, process thing together. It was really cool. It was like a corporate self help. And she gave that to me years ago. And I didn't keep it. I'm not really very nostalgic. Um, but I remember our conversation about we were going to have our weddings and we were going to be like best man and girl for each other and things like that. And And so when the first person showed up, he literally looked like the Ken doll, like this other version. And I was like, you and the universe delivered it so well. This is actually more than I ever thought I deserved, more than I could even imagine. So the other person who I let go of is also amazing. Like, it's a yes. And then the other person was a yes. So then I just chose the new person because they were more dynamic. They were, and plus we were the same age, and we had a few other matching things. But the other person was more of a yes because I saw my hidden darker side in reflected back, and I saw that potential idealized reflected back. So I was like, I think I found the one. So I would you could call that being glamored. You could call it the halo effect. I was literally struck. I was so awestruck, starstruck by his looks and his power and his passion and his vulnerability that I was like I was starstruck. Uh so that was an obvious yes. The other time I've been like starstruck is I had this really mystical friend. Her name was Mandy, and she had a Gemini sun and a Pisces moon. And she was this artist. In fact, most of my artwork now is because of her. She draws kind of, I would call it childlike, free spirit, whimsical art, where there's a huge dose of inner child. Before I met her, my stuff was more realistic. I was going for more realism. I was going for more comic book style and being frustrated with it. And after I met her, her aura, her grace, her beauty, because she really embodied that Kuan Yin energy in the female form, and she had guys chasing her down the street. She was like this exotic ocean goddess. Uh, she looked like right out of Avatar. You know, just like a human colored avatar. She was really cool. Uh, and when we got together, our auras would just kind of like connect. We both have Pisces moon, and so I felt like a very special bond with her. And one of the guys that she was seeing at the time flew out or came out, drove out from California. He drove out um, to hang out with her at her birthday. And, this was years ago. You know, I was still pretty young. And I remember I was in my room just waiting for her to come over, and she brought her boyfriend over as a surprise. And when they both came through my bedroom door into my personal space, I was so overwhelmed by both of them. One held the divine goddess energy, the other one held the divine masculine energy. Both were like beautiful, and I cried. And I was like, why am I crying? I never cry. I'm so emotionally repressed. I love the fact that I could count on my hand. I've only cried 5 times. So this was like number 6, and it was a crying I didn't understand. But I also remembered, I bet this is how I felt when my parents came to adopt me from the orphanage. These two young adults staring down at the baby, and in my like little 1-year old eyes, I probably saw them as God and Goddess, these beautiful, loving, radiant people. And my friend and her boyfriend, his name was Craig, uh, they were that. They are that. They embodied that. And my that deep part of me that was beyond who I think I am today responded deeply, and I cried. And they ran over and they hugged me, and I usually don't like hugs, but I felt safe and I felt loved and I felt so. This is an example of someone who carries divine masculine and divine feminine, and gender doesn't matter. You can be male or female, and you can vibrate stronger, you can be dialed in, you can have loyalties to the god or goddess energy, the him or the her, and the him and her. And so you can have a very powerful response by someone who is reflecting this to you. It doesn't mean that they're your soulmate. It doesn't mean that they're your twin flame. It doesn't mean you need to be in relationship with them in a partnership. But it does mean that the polarization is really strong. And all things are good, so why not get to know them for a while? And honor and respect that they are vessels of this divine energy, plus a personality for this lifetime. It's usually this personality of the lifetime that is disappointing, that is shallow. But that's what it is. It's just a base operating system to get by. It's just designed to deal with what's going on now in humanity. But anyone can learn to polarize to the divine feminine or to the divine masculine or to both. And so I think trans is a really sacred place to be. I think that's where you get into high priest and high priestess energy. is when you're working with both polarities. And like the yin yang symbol or a circle, completion, wholeness. Wouldn't it be awesome to be conscious of these divine masculine and feminine God, goddess energies within you, and to be in such harmony and partnership with you that then it reflects outwardly in your life. By the time it reflects outwardly in your life, you don't need it. You're like, I feel my masculine power. I do feel 6'5". I am a hard worker. I do like logic and reason, and I have a legacy and a responsibility to my tribe and my community and the world. I am nurturing. I am loving. I am intuitive. I am magical. I am sweet. I'm a great cook. I love to take care of kids and my pets. I'm a nurturer. And when you have it all within you, you're not lacking. So there's no need. So the archetype that's been hinted at is this inner child, the innocence, but there's also a dark side to the inner child. What do you do when you don't get what you want? What do you do when you think you need that? What do you do when you think you want that? Do you cry? Do you throw temper tantrums? Do you throw things? And we find as an adult, there's this eternal, timeless inner child. You're like, I'm 50 years old and I don't want to pay my bills. I want to go grocery shop, or I want to go shopping for clothes. Shopaholics, you know? Like when you make these immature decisions, you might need to pay more attention to your inner child. When you feel lost and abandoned, you know, inner child. When you feel angry and you want to throw a temper tantrum, inner child. And sometimes we get what we want, and our inner child's good at manipulating, you know? And so sometimes we are repelled by our inner child. We weren't allowed to have an inner child that got to throw temper tantrums until it was exhausted and still realized the law was the law and no meant no. Some people had parents that caved in and created monsters, you know. Um, and also looking at the inner child, do you really need to label yourself as a narcissist, a sociopath, a crazy? Or can you be more gentle and go, everyone at that age is that. And I reserve the right for 10 minutes to be my inner narcissistic child and think the world is all about me and not care about anyone else, throw my temper tantrum, and when I'm done, adult, come back to present and deal with my life. So, in our culture, we're taught to hurry up and grow up. It's not really develop the inner child, which then becomes emotional maturity, which then becomes, able to handle things on your own. You kind of skip a step. We think if you're going to be a man, you got to learn not to cry. You got to go face challenges. You got to go, shoot an animal and play football. And, and rip you away from mom because then you'll be too feminized. So we fear letting boys grow up in their own time. We fear letting girls grow up in their own time. A lot of parents compete against their child, or, there's a lot of toxic things that go on. So we have a lot of injuries through growing up. And so it only makes sense that when you start really honoring your divine masculine, your divine feminine, your inner god, your inner goddess, when you really start to look at the problems of your life, a lot of it comes from the dark side of the inner child, the shadow aspects. Those shadow aspects aren't something that need to be destroyed, but they probably need to be loved. And so we're talking about relationships, and so this just serves you in life. Like when someone's really manipulative, you'd be like, oh, honesty wasn't allowed in this person's life. They're not a bad person. When someone is narcissistic, they probably had to like really protect themselves. And so there's the compassion, there's the wisdom, there's the understanding, there's the maturity. Um, and then there becomes the healthy relationships. Knowing thyself, knowing the forces that are interplaying with you are archetypal. And this is a language that you can use. You can be like, really, depth psychology, like archetype, Jungian depth psychology is all about this. And when you can honor, you have a fullness to your life. There's a beauty about you because you have all the puzzle pieces. You have a complete circle. You have the yin and the yang, and it's not outside of you. So if someone rejects you or has to leave your life, it's not a crisis. It's not a grief. It's, well, that's nice, but I have my own inner goddess. That's nice, I have my own masculinity. That's nice, I have my own caretaker, my own inner child. I have my own joy. I have my, when you have all these archetypes working for you, um, you feel a sense of completeness. Now you're really attractive. Now you can really have relationships. From this place of wholeness, you can interact with the world better. So that's what I'm saying with this video. And it doesn't matter if your twin flame leaves you or if it's not working out. You can be like, bye, who cares? It doesn't matter if you never find your soulmate. There's nothing special about it. You are your own divinity. So there are the God within. Who are you as God? You know, source energy. So self realization, enlightenment, is realizing you are it. I am that I am. I'm the clear mirror. I am, you know, I am awareness itself. I am consciousness itself. I have no face. I was never born. When you have an experience like that, um, it really dismantles all that want and need. So I remember I was going through my history and I was getting mad at my parents for my horrible life because I'm all into self pity. And all of a sudden I snapped out of it and I go, wait, I was never born. Why was I putting that much pressure on my parents? I know I was never born. What a joke. I'm divinity itself. There is no loss. And this physical world can only give me trophies, symbols that represent things, but not are those things themselves. So then I just chilled out. So